Yo, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch. So I've got you guys an update on Tropical Storm Helene. All right, Tropical Storm Helene has formed in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, right now is threading the needle in between the Yucatan Peninsula and the western tip of Cuba. All right, we've got big information from the National Hurricane Center as this storm is expected to make landfall in the Big Bend of Florida as a Category 3 major hurricane sometime around Thursday night into Friday. All right, big impacts are expected. We're talking about damaging winds, storm surge, and potentially very, very intense and severe flooding. All right, I've got all the details coming right up. All right, so thank you for joining me here on this Tuesday night. We have a lot to talk about in this video. We're going to go over pretty much every piece of information that I can give you guys. I want to give you guys just a very detailed video tonight on basically just what the future for Tropical Storm Helene is going to be. So, as you can see right now, she's popping off a lot of convection at the moment. Just starting out here, taking a look at your current satellite. This is your storm right now. This is it right over here. You can see it's threading the needle right now, going right in between the western tip of Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula. All right, it is trying to form outer bands, and it's got a pretty good spin to it. All right, so I do think that this is definitely a stronger storm. I think it's trying to strengthen a lot, and I think that by now it should be a moderate to moderately strong to high end tropical storm. So this is already, setting its sights on becoming a hurricane by tonight. I think by tomorrow morning, we'll most likely see this at least a Category 1 hurricane. And some models even suggest we may even see a Category 2 hurricane by tomorrow morning. If that happens, we'll most likely see a more higher, we'll probably just see higher impacts play out into Florida because we'll see this storm get a little bit more of a head start on development. What's going on behind it? Well, you've got two tropical waves that are behind the system. You've got one over here trying to work its way over towards the Lesser Antilles, not noted by the National Hurricane Center, but it definitely could be in a few days. Right now, it's popping off some light convection, really nothing to worry about. All right, this is the big tropical wave that has the potential of developing. Doesn't look too good on satellite now, but it's fighting off some dry air. But tomorrow morning, things are really going to start ramping up with the system. It already has a high risk of development, so we'll briefly talk on that for just a moment. But everything else in the Atlantic looks pretty quiet for the most part. But we really got to get going with our latest information on Helene over here in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, so going over here, you can see, take a look at the tropical Atlantic from the National Hurricane Center homepage here. You can see, as right now, what we've got is you got Tropical Storm Helene over here, got maximum sustained winds at about 60 miles per hour, so you could consider this is probably a high-end tropical storm. All right, you've got minimum central pressure at around 991 millibars. So this is almost a sub 990 millibar storm, which is I'll say it's a pretty strong storm when you get down to sub 990. So very close to becoming a hurricane here. All right, current movement right now is west northwest at 10 knots to 12 miles per hour. Not moving particularly fast at the moment, but I do think it's going to definitely speed up as it begins to move into the central Gulf of Mexico. All right, now taking a look here at our tropical wave that is coming off the coast of Africa. You can see a broad low pressure system associated with a tropical wave located west of the Cabo Verde Islands is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions appear favorable for gradual development of the system, and a tropical depression is likely to form in the next few days while it moves westward to west-northwestward across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic. All right, so basically what they've got is they've got this area of interest here. Looks like it's going to steer north of the Caribbean. It's going to steer north of the Lesser Antilles, the Greater Antilles, and all these islands out here. So hopefully we're expecting this to be a fish storm, which seems like it's going to be the case. But as of right now, this does look like it's going to develop. This would take the name Isaac because the next name is Isaac. It's kind of funny because me and my friend Davis's Weather does great live streams. Go check him out. We always, look back at hurricanes and just notice that the I name always seems to be the big one of the year. And I think Helene is actually going to take the place of Isaac. Obviously, last Isaac we had was pretty significant. But it really does seem like this next tropical wave could definitely be Isaac next few days. But let's get right into the forecast for what Tropical Storm Helene is looking like as of right now and into the next couple of days. All right, so starting out here, just zooming in on its current satellite, you can see right now it's pretty much threading the needle as we speak. You can see a lot of convection going on here. This is pretty serious convection. You can see these pink colors. This is deep convection. You got high cloud tops building up into the atmosphere. You've got tall thunderstorms, cold tops. That's all you need for convection, and you can even see the formation of outer bands certainly trying to form here. Actually, impacting the Yucatan Peninsula. You're already starting to get tropical storm force winds just due to how big this storm is, right? You can see all the way down here. You're still getting the effects from this tropical storm while it's already bringing effects into Cuba. That's basically what we're talking about now. So just a very big storm. You got this broad spin that's really starting to form this storm for just get it into shape. So this will look much more organized on satellite tomorrow morning. Right now it kind of looks like a mess, but every hurricane starts out like this, where it'll look like a mess, but slowly but surely it will eventually organize and develop, and we could definitely point out even some features starting out now. But once again, this will look much more textbook, if you want to call it like that, in the next few days. So we're just gonna have to wait and see, and take a look at what Helene's gonna do, as it turns over waters here, in the Gulf of Mexico. So moving on here, we're going to take a look at the current cone for the National Hurricane Center. So I believe this is the first time I show you guys this. Apologize for not being able to get an update in yesterday. I had a ton of homework to do. But yeah, we got a cone from the National Hurricane Center. This was named PTC 9, like I expected. They went ahead and named this. So they were putting out a Category 2 hurricane to make landfall in Florida by Thursday night. Fast forward to today, and now we have a major hurricane expected, right? Helene is expected to make landfall in the Big Bend of Florida as a Category 3 major hurricane sometime around 8 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, all right? So as of right now, this is what the current wind field is. You've got hurricane warnings going out for the far eastern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then parts of Cuba here, the western tip of Cuba, also included in tropical storm warnings. But you can see, as of right now, we are expecting this to strengthen into a hurricane by 2 p.m. tomorrow. So around tomorrow afternoon, midday tomorrow, we're expecting this to be a Category 1 hurricane. This will continue to strengthen. And by Thursday, middle of the night Thursday, so Wednesday into Thursday, tomorrow night into Thursday morning, we're expecting this to strengthen into a Category 2 hurricane. And then it seems like about lunchtime, just a few hours after lunch, while this is approaching Florida, you'll start to get the impacts if you're on the coastline here. We're expecting this to bump up all the way to a Category 3 major hurricane, all right? So by 2 p.m. Thursday, this will be a major hurricane just off the coast of Florida here, and it's expected to make landfall in the Big Bend of Florida. You've got hurricane warnings in the red here. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We've got hurricane warnings in the red, tropical storm warnings in the blue. Tropical storm warnings going out for the entire coast of Florida here. So anybody in this blue shade, you're in tropical storm warnings. Currently, right now, the Keys are under tropical storm warnings, and you're probably wondering why the heck are they putting tropical storm warnings out for the Keys? They're not anywhere close to the path. Well, that's because of the size, just the brunt size of the storm. It's so big. All right, this storm is going to be massive. Like when I say massive, this is going to be huge. Some hurricanes are very small. We've seen major hurricanes that have been very small, very compact. But this hurricane is just going to be flat out gigantic. So that's why we have tropical storm warnings all the way out there, is because this wind field is going to be so big. You're going to have major hurricane force winds, where this marking is here, but you're still going to get tropical storm force winds all the way out here. And potentially you could see we have tropical storm watches going out for the eastern coast of Florida. That's even farther away from the cone of this system. So we could potentially have, who's out here? Gosh, I can't remember what cities are out here, but I believe St. Augusta. I think St. Augustine's out here. St. Augustine's, Florida. These areas along the eastern coastline of Florida are also at risk for experiencing tropical storm force conditions just because of the sheer size of the storm. By 2 a.m. Friday, we're expecting this to already be in Georgia, weakened down to a tropical storm. Now, some model guidance does suggest that we may still have a hurricane by the time this goes into southern Georgia, just because of how much moisture this thing's going to pull up with it. It's going to be able to work with a ton of moisture, and also it's going to be working very quickly. So it's going to be able to float right over Georgia, and it's going to take a little bit more of a longer time to weaken this thing out. But by 2 p.m. Friday, we should see this thing be down to a tropical depression by the time this gets into Tennessee. And then by 2 p.m. Saturday, by the time we get to the weekend, this should be centered right over southern Illinois, and we'll talk about those impacts in a future update. All right, so I'm going to do this on the fly. I apologize for doing this. But we're going to take a look at pivotal weather because I did mean to set this up, but I forgot to. We're going to look at, we're just going to zoom in on our hazards map so you can see how far inland these warnings and watches go. So we go here, zoom into the southeast. So here you got the entire state of Florida currently under some sort of weather warning. As of right now, if you're in the maroon shade, this dark red shade, these are your tropical storm warnings. And then you can see our hurricane watch. This is where you have this hot pink shade. This actually does go into Georgia. So usually when you get hurricane watches, they usually get upgraded to hurricane warnings, later on. So that means that we could potentially be dealing with hurricane force winds and conditions expected here into Georgia and into a little bit just farther inland into Florida. But I believe as of right now, Tallahassee is actually under a hurricane warning. Hurricane warnings are currently in the red shade here, a little bit lighter than the tropical storm warnings. But here you can see pretty much the entire Big Bend of Florida. This includes Perry, I believe. This basically just includes the entire area that Hurricane Idalia hit last year. This is the same exact area getting hit by future Hurricane Helene. And so right now we have hurricane warnings for the entire Big Bend of Florida. All right, in this peach shade here, this pink shade, we have tropical storm watches. This does include the entire state of Florida pretty much, except for the far southeastern side of Florida. It looks like you guys will be spared by the impacts here, but Miami, you guys are definitely going to see at least tropical storm conditions, potentially even hurricane conditions. I doubt it, but it's possible. This does go into Georgia. It's interesting because you have hurricane watches a county away from tropical storm watches, so I do think that there's a possibility that you could see these go a little bit farther inland depending on how strong the storm makes landfall, but I think it's very possible that you could end up with tropical storm force winds, or potentially gusts, I should say, a little bit farther inland than expected. So we'll probably see this fluctuate in the next couple of days, really just depending on how strong the storm gets before it makes landfall. But as of right now, you can see this does go up pretty far into Georgia. And then this gets cut off by our flood watches. You got a big flood watch already in effect for areas of northern Georgia going into Tennessee. This is western Tennessee and eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina here in this dark green shade. All right, we already have flood watches up for this system. I mean, this is coming in. This is only in 2 days, guys. This is very soon. This one's really going to start to pick up the pace, and it's just going to jet north, and it's going to make a landfall, and then boom, we're pretty much underway after that. All right, so we're going to take a look at the GFS model, and we're going to take a look at a hurricane model, our HWRF hurricane model, our main hurricane model that we look at. We're going to be comparing the two and kind of figuring out why the GFS has now turned away from the worst case scenario and has actually turned to one of the better case scenarios that we've seen here from the model. So you look at the GFS from today, we'll actually take a look at what it was showing last night. This was last night's GFS. All right, last night's GFS showed something that actually looked a little promising. It did not show a sub 950 millibar low, which is most likely a Category 4, Category 5 hurricane. It actually had this thing only down to a 965, which is most likely a Category 3 hurricane, major hurricane still. All right, but definitely not anything like other runs that the GFS was showing. Now, we obviously got worried because the GFS consistently showed a Cat 4 to Cat 5 scenario playing out. But it just went on this trend where it stopped showing those crazy runs. Still shows a pretty strong hurricane because that's, we're expecting a strong hurricane, major hurricane, but it didn't show those crazy runs. And so finally we get to today's 18Z, and once again, we don't see a particularly strong and wild scenario play out, but we do see still that major hurricane signal from the GFS. So you take this out to 2 p.m. Thursday. This is exactly when the National Hurricane Center has this bumping up to a Category 3 hurricane, pretty much right in line with the National Hurricane Center's forecast. Look at this outer band here, guys. This will absolutely dump rain over Georgia, over sections of far southeastern Mississippi, or I believe Alabama, I should say. All right, but you can see that really just, getting bombarded by rainfall here. A lot of very, very heavy torrential rainfall here. These first effects are going to lead to a lot of flooding. You're going to probably get tropical storm force winds in there. And then this does make landfall right at 8 p.m. So just after dinner time on Thursday, we're expecting this to make landfall as a 966 millibar low, according to the GFS. So I shouldn't say we're expecting it to, but GFS has this at about 955 millibar low, moving right into the Big Bend of Florida. Look at this eye wall here, guys. This is a very, very sharp eye wall that you see here on the southern side of the storm. You're just getting lashed by heavy rainfall already across sections of South Carolina, Georgia, and into sections of Alabama here. But you can see just a humongous system. I mean, this is what we're talking about. Look at the size of this thing. This thing is an absolute monster, but it's moving so fast, so quickly that it's in Georgia, but it's still a hurricane. It's still a strong hurricane. This is still a 974 millibar low by the middle of the night, Thursday into Friday. You'd think that this is, this would, in pretty much every other scenario, you'd probably have this down to a tropical storm at this time. GFS still wants a 974 millibar low, which is probably a Category 2 hurricane, right over central Georgia. So I think that's a big reason why we may actually see those hurricane watches and eventually warnings push further north. All right, that's a big reason for that. And it's just because of how fast this storm is moving. All right, but this is going to continue to move north. And look at this. I mean, South Carolina, North Carolina, the western side of the two states, the Carolinas, heavy rain. I will say this. I mean, you are going to get very, very strong winds, but also the rainfall is going to be torrential. This is going to last for a very long time because of the size of the system. If this were moving more slowly, this would be a catastrophic flooding event, if it's not going to be already. But you still have a 980 millibar low all the way up into Tennessee. Think of it. It made landfall as a 965 millibar low here in Florida. And it's still up to a 980 in Tennessee. Look how much land it has to cover there. I mean, it's just moving so quickly that it can maintain its strength for such a long time. But this is dumping rain over Kentucky, over Tennessee, northern Georgia, northern Alabama. You got portions of the western Carolinas out here. Everybody is just getting absolutely hammered by the system. And finally, by Saturday morning into afternoon, the rain finally starts to secede, but still by Friday afternoon, 988 millibar low. That is just the wild thing I'm seeing from the GFS. And finally, this dies out. But I mean, very, very concerning run from the GFS just with the rainfall. As far as the strength of the system, not as concerning as what we've seen in the past couple of days, but still a very strong major hurricane making landfall in the Big Bend of Florida. So we take a look now, moving on to the HWRF hurricane model. This is pretty much the first hurricane model that will come down here on your hurricane models list. So that's what we're going to look at for today's update. And you can see that this storm, it threads the needle. It does move a little bit farther to the west, which would actually give it would give it more time to strengthen. Because remember, if the storm definitely is already threading the needle. We already know that's going to happen. But if it moved farther to the east, it would actually have less time to stay over waters, and that would give it less time to strengthen. So really, the fact that the storm could potentially move farther to the west would actually increase its strength. So HWRF is saying that we're going to wake up with not only a Category 1 hurricane, but a 978 millibar hurricane, which is probably high in Cat 1, low in Cat 2, already by tomorrow morning. Take this out, and here comes that rapid intensification. We're starting to drop here. This gets down to a 966. Remember, the GFS had this making landfall as a 966, and HWRF has this already at a 966, by tomorrow night. All right, so that's a 24-hour difference. That gives the HWRF is basically giving this storm an extra 24 hours to develop rather than the GFS just keeping this down to a 966 at landfall. So big time difference there. I will say I do think that it's interesting. The keep saying National Hurricane Center. The hurricane models always seem to overdo these kind of events, these kind of systems. But I really do think that with this system, I think there is a very high possibility that the hurricane models can actually be more reliable. I just think with the setup of the system, with the amount of moisture it's going to be pulling up, with these sea surface temperatures, I think that it's possible that the hurricane models could be a little bit more realistic. I do think that it's pretty likely that we're going to see I don't think we're going to settle with just like a 967 or whatever millibar hurricane. I think it's possible that we're not going to settle with just that. I think there's a very there's a very real chance that we could definitely get below 960 millibars. So we really just have to see what this thing's going to do over the Gulf. But it can certainly overperform. We may see some rapid intensification that we aren't expecting. But I really do think that, just based off of what every hurricane model is showing, I think it's very, very possible and there's a very real chance that we could definitely get a stronger storm than initially anticipated. But this is a 953 millibar low. This is starting to go into rapid intensification as we get from Thursday into Friday. So this is actually this is interesting. This is actually a little bit of different timing here. This is already by 11 a.m. We have a 945 millibar low, which is most likely a Category 4 hurricane, major hurricane here. Look at that northern eye wall. That northern eye wall and these outer bands just absolutely pushing these waves into Florida's coastline. You're already getting major storm surge, potentially catastrophic storm surge at this point. And you're just getting a lot of big impacts before the storm is even making landfall. Now, when does this make landfall? Well, it makes landfall in Florida's Big Bend region right here by 5 p.m., so just a tad bit earlier than the GFS. But this is as a 941 millibar low. That is almost sub 940, which is close to Category 5 territory. Probably a mid to high end Category 4 hurricane they've got here making landfall. This is why there's that potential for this storm to be a little bit stronger than we initially anticipated, because every hurricane model is on board with this. I can go down through every hurricane model that's on this list except for the GFS and the European model, and I can guarantee you everyone is showing a stronger system and a stronger scenario play out rather than the GFS and European model. All right. But you can kind of see this play out even with the old runs. This is not to scare you guys, not to hype this up, but look at what was happening a few days ago. I don't know if we can still look at this. We might not be able to, and it might be better that we don't. Oh, here it is. This was actually a run that was shown by the HAFSB hurricane model. This is an 888 millibar low. 888. This is not to be taken seriously. This is just a very, very just wild and incredible signal from a hurricane model. This is the most aggressive hurricane model signal I've ever seen in my life. And obviously this would never play out. But this just shows you how aggressive the models have gotten, the hurricane models at least. This shows you how concerning it was, because when you get a hurricane model showing a sub 900 millibar low, that's just a screaming signal for Cat 5. Screaming Cat 5 signal. Obviously, once again, not to be taken seriously. There's no way in the world we're getting an 888 millibar low. But it just shows you how big of a signal there is. And it still lingers because you still get this hurricane down with 940 millibar low as this makes landfall. Still intact. Perfectly intact eye wall here. 360 eye wall. You're seeing no precipitation right in the center of the eye. So this would be a textbook hurricane. You could even have a blue sky eye with the system. Makes landfall just after dinner time. Right around dinner time is a 940 millibar low. And this is starting to move into Georgia, 943 millibars. Look at this. This is still a Cat 3, Cat 4 hurricane already into Georgia. That's the concerning part of this. That not only the GFS, but the hurricane models maintaining that strength, pretty similar to how strong it's going to be at landfall. That's something that both the GFS and the models have looked at and have suggested. But This is still a 961 millibar low, bring a ton of impacts, just a heck ton of rainfall to Georgia, to South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, just lashed with rainfall out here. And then this is going all the way up into Tennessee and into Illinois and Indiana, and then kind of just getting caught up in our weather pattern. But that just shows you that there is still a potential for this storm to be much stronger than it's currently forecasted to be. So, quickly to show you guys what this would look like on satellite. This also is a good example of how big this storm looks like. This is a simulated satellite from tonight's HWRF. Let's look at the 18Z run here. All right. So if that exact scenario were to play out, this is pretty much right around what the satellite would look like. Look at that. All right, this is at the moment of landfall. Look at this. I mean, you can't even see the eye really on satellite, but you're really starting to see the wrap up. But look how massive this storm is. This is all moisture that's getting pulled up into the southeastern United States way earlier before landfall, and this is the center of the low, moving right into the Big Bend region of Florida, and that's just a big time hurricane they've got there. But a better example is last night's 18Z. Look at what this eye could look like. This eye could be huge. Just the fact that this storm's going to be big means that this eye could potentially be big. And look at this. You get absolutely no cloud cover in there. That's a strong hurricane. And what is this? This is a 938 millibar low. So that's a little bit stronger than what tonight's run of the HWRF shows. But still, just an absolutely wild scenario potentially could definitely play out here. And there it is in Georgia. Still pretty crazy to see that we could potentially still have an eye as the storm gets into Georgia. But that's the full life cycle of it potentially. I don't know. We're just gonna have to wait and see. We'll see what the National Hurricane Center is saying for this tomorrow. We'll see what the models show. I think it's good that the GFS is starting to be on board with a little bit of a lighter scenario. But if the hurricane models continue to show this, that's still a concern we need to definitely consider, mentioning in future updates. So, what are impacts going to look like? This is an interesting question that a lot of people are starting to ask now, because usually we get the okay to start talking about specific details on hurricanes whenever we get a National Hurricane Center forecast. At least that's what I think it is. That's when I think we get the okay, when we get a National Hurricane Center forecast. So that's what we're gonna talk about now. So this is the NAM high-res model that we're going to look at for our wind gusts here, just to give you guys a sense of where and how strong these wind gusts are going to be. So starting out here, this is right around landfall. What are the winds gusting around this eye wall looking like? Well, you can see right around that eye wall, 133 knots. That's about 143 knots. There's a potential that we could definitely have wind gusts up to around 150 miles per hour, not sustained winds, but wind gusts could definitely near 150 miles per hour. Serious winds, destructive winds. I wouldn't say catastrophic damage is expected, but definitely destructive winds. You're going to see a lot of debris-filled winds, meaning that if you're right in the eye wall of the system, right as it makes landfall, you're going to get a piece of houses that are going to be flying in the air, because you're going to get roofs that are going to rip off and just go flying across the street. It's going to be like mayhem. All right, I've seen videos of this during Idalia, during Ian, during pretty much every major hurricane. There a ton of this goes on, where you get roofs flying and houses just being heavily damaged or destroyed. All right, but these winds are no joke here, and you can see this wind field here. Anybody in this gold shade, this is where you can talk about wind gusts that are going to be exceeding hurricane force. Look how large this swath of winds is. This is a very, very large wind field. Hurricane force winds outside of here, in here, and then you can even see in this purple shade, in this red shade, this is where you get the tropical storm force winds. That's almost the size. That's easily half the size, if not more than half of the size of Florida. That's a humongous hurricane here that you've got. But this is starting to creep its way into Florida. Notice how you start to see these spikes in the wind gusts. All right, at this point, Perry would be gusting right around 100 to 110 knots. All right, Tallahassee definitely potential to be gusting over hurricane force. All right, what is this eye wall looking like? Well, as of at this point, it looks like about 122 knots. That's approaching 130 mile per hour wind gusts. You get the sense. I mean, these winds are no joke. These are the real deal winds. But yeah, I mean, you could just see flashing 136. So there's a potential for at landfall we could have gusts up to 140, 150 miles per hour. I mean, that is, those winds are going to be causing significant damage, power outages, widespread. All right, I don't believe hurricane warnings are issued yet. Excuse me, I don't believe hurricane evacuations are ordered yet. All I know is that Florida has declared a state of emergency already for I think a lot of counties. But I don't believe evacuations haven't been ordered yet. But I'm positive, certainly, that we're going to get evacuations across Big Bend of Florida. I think Perry could definitely get evacuated. But if you get ordered to evacuate, go. Just do it. Go. Look at this. I mean, this is enough to tell you to go. I mean, you can't ask yourself if you're thinking about considering staying, if you're in the path of the eye here and you're considering staying, just look at this. Do you think you can survive 130-mile-per-hour wind gusts? Do you think that? And do you think that you could potentially survive 140 to 150-mile-per-hour wind gusts? How about that? Okay. I'm not trying to sound like stupid or anything or rude. I don't know. All I'm trying to get to you guys is that if you get ordered to evacuate, that is them telling you that you can't live safely. That there's a higher chance of you not being able to survive the storm conditions if you didn't evacuate. So just do it if you get evacuated, but not to scare you guys once again. But this wind field is very large. You could definitely see here in the southwestern Georgia. This is what I'm talking about. Those hurricane warnings, I really do think, are going to start to spread pretty far inland into Georgia, just from this run of the NAM. But this final hour just ends with winds gusting near 100 miles per hour, or higher into sections of southwestern Georgia. All right, so we don't have enough, we don't have enough range on the NAM to be able to look this far out, but we can kind of get a sense of what the eye wall winds, according to the NAM, could look like. These wind gusts, what these wind gusts could potentially look like in our eye wall. And this is pretty crazy, but these are your wind gusts. These are not sustained winds, but the NAM does want hurricane force winds for a massive area. All right, I unfortunately cannot measure how wide this area is, but you can see that there is a large swath of wind gusts in excess of 130 miles per hour, which would be catastrophic. All right, this would literally, I mean, you would get so many homes destroyed. You would get, I mean, roofs torn off, businesses destroyed. You get, I mean, just a ton of impacts from this. Look at the eye. The eye in the eye wall. In the center of the eye, you get winds gusting to 35 miles per hour. Outside of there, look at this. Look at that spike. 160 mile per hour wind gusts. Near 160 mile per hour wind gusts. I mean, that is just insane. I mean, those are Category 5 winds. So the NAM just going bizarre on these winds here. All right, just gives you a sense of how strong these winds could be near landfall. And this is as the storm gets a little bit closer. I mean, look, the NAM is never a model to look at for hurricanes. But this is like the literal worst case scenario. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about that. But just to give you guys a sense of what this wind field could potentially look like. And I want to look at these coastal regions here. Tampa. I want to look at Longboat Key, Sarasota, Clearwater, these populated areas. I mean, you guys could definitely be gusting close to hurricane force at landfall Clearwater. Look at this. According to the NAM, potentially up to 80 miles per hour. I think it's possible. St. Petersburg, mid-80s. Even Tampa could definitely be gusting over hurricane force. So all you got to do is you got to wait and see. If you get ordered to evacuate, do it. But, man, these impacts are going to be big. So now we talk about the rainfall with this system. So as of right now, this is what the current Weather Prediction Center rainfall outlook is looking like. Right now, Tallahassee, you guys, we are expecting 6 to 8 inches in that area. If you go south of there, though, just west of the Big Bend of Florida, we're expecting we have a swath of 8 to 12 inches that are forecasted. 8 to 12 inches of rainfall. That is a ton of rainfall. It's going to lead to flash flooding. We most likely will get flash flooding emergencies if that happens. All right, and that is because of what the GFS was showing. You saw that that very large outer band that was producing those extreme rainfall rates. All right, you can kind of see that, showing up here on the forecast map, where you do have that same general area under the gun for potentially up to a foot of rainfall. And then you can see that, it doesn't stop there. You can see all the way down the coastline from Tampa to Clearwater. You can see anybody pretty much on the west coast of Florida expecting at least 4 to 6 inches here. If you're in the yellow shade, gold shade, that's 6 to 8 inches, and then if you're in the orange shade, that's we're expecting 8 to 12 inches of rain. And it doesn't stop there. You can see into Alabama and even into Georgia. You can see that we're expecting a lot of areas to pick up at least 4 inches of rainfall, and then you can see we're graded with another, bigger area, another widespread area of 6 to 8 inches expected, pretty much going down all the way from extreme southern and extreme southwestern Virginia down into far western North Carolina, western South Carolina here. But this does include Atlanta. This does include areas west of Charlotte, west of Augusta, and pretty much just to the east of Chattanooga. You can see 6 to 8 inches, much more widespread here. And inside of that, another bigger area of 8 to 12 inches, and a few specks here of 12 to 16 inches of rain. This is going to be. This is going to end up being slow moving. This is going to it's a very odd system. It's a very large system, but it's going to move very fast. Let me get rid of this pen here. Let me change the size real quick. Clear this off the screen, get organized. So this is going to be very fast up the coastline, through the coastline, and then it's going to slow down here as it gets into the Carolinas, into Tennessee, into Georgia. But it's going to be producing a ton of rainfall just because of its size, and it's going to be moisture packed, moisture filled, and it's just going to really lead to a very dangerous situation there. So you can see, as of right now, from the Weather Prediction Center, their official forecast for Tropical Storm Helene is that they have a moderate risk for flash flooding, so they're expecting a pretty high chance of seeing flash flooding here in this red shade. Pretty much going out for Tallahassee, points north into Georgia, a very large swath here of Georgia, pretty much the central, northern, and western side of the state, going into western South Carolina, western North Carolina, and far eastern Tennessee. Everybody in this red shade here, you have a moderate risk for flash flooding, 40% risk. I will say I have been under a moderate risk of flash flooding myself. It's no fun. All right, it felt like every street was flooded. This is worse than Debbie. I'm saying that right now. The flooding's worse than Debbie. Maybe not as bad as what happened in South Carolina, North Carolina, but this is worse than Debbie. All right, this is serious rainfall here. The potential for rainfall in western South Carolina, western North Carolina, northern Georgia, and into Tennessee is serious. All right, I think that we're probably going to see potentially one or two small spots here of a high risk end up spreading here across your map in the next coming days. So for the final part of the update, storm surge. That's another huge thing. We have storm surge warnings that are already in effect. Look at this. From Mexico Beach down to Indian Pass, you got 1 to 3 feet of storm surge. I'm gonna go over all these details, all these different cities and areas, because you can already tell. I mean, this is just serious storm surge. We enter the Big Bend of Florida. That's when your storm surge expectations spike. You can see from Indian Pass over towards the Okeechobee River. We're expecting 5 to 10 feet of storm surge. Already 5 to 10 feet of storm surge out there if you're in the red shade. But look at this. All right, all the way from Chesapeake, and anybody in this purple shade, we're expecting 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. All right, that is very similar to what we saw during Hurricane Ian. Hurricane Ian was a Category 5 hurricane. Made landfall as Category 4, high in Category 4 with, winds that were just 2 miles per hour shy of Category 5 at landfall. It was Category 5 just prior to landfall, but weakened. All right, we saw 18-foot storm surge here. That's just a 3-foot difference. So catastrophic storm surge is there. There's a likely chance that we're going to see catastrophic storm surge in this area, entire Big Bend of Florida. So Perry's going to be inundated. These coastal communities really not looking good for the storm surge. So up to 12 feet, 12 plus feet of storm surge here in this purple shade. From Chesapeake down to the Anclote River, we're expecting 6 to 10 feet of storm surge, still major storm surge. Because remember, you're gonna get water that's gonna be pushed directly in this direction, and that's just gonna be bad news for these coastal communities out here. But down towards the middle of the Longboat Key, still 5 to 8 feet of storm surge. It's very significant. Coastal roads completely flooded. You're gonna get coastal flood warnings, all of that. Tampa Bay, 5 to 8 feet of storm surge. If you get outer bands here, tropical outer bands are going to be moving like this and trying to push inland, you're going to get water. You're going to get waves that are going to be pushing into Tampa Bay. You're going to get big time storm surge in Tampa Bay. I'm worried. I'm genuinely worried about Tampa Bay because all this water. Let me get my pen straight here. 1 second. Yeah, so all this water is going to be pushed into Tampa Bay, and that's just going to all lead up to 5 to 8 feet of storm surge, flooded roads, especially on the coastline there. But down towards Charlotte Harbor, Englewood, we're expecting a little bit lighter on the storm surge, 4 to 7 in Englewood, but still 3 to 5 feet in Charlotte Harbor. And then for the Keys, Florida Keys, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, and also for areas of the South Carolina and Georgia coastline. All right, so that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for coming to watch. We'll see you guys in the next video. So, apologize for making that such a long video. Just really felt the need to get all this potentially life-saving information out to you guys. I'll continue to try my best to keep you guys posted on what we see out here, but it's possible that we're going to see an upgrade to a Category 4 hurricane. I don't know. I wouldn't say that's unlikely at this point. I think there's still a genuine chance that it could happen if we see the GFS fall back into the uptick in the forecast. But it really depends on what we see in the next couple of days. Obviously, it depends on what Helene does over the next couple of hours. But just gotta wait and see. Be sure to listen to your government officials. If they tell you to evacuate, evacuate. But don't be scared. Be prepared. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys. So thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next video.